The Nigel Farage Show.
Good evening, everybody. Well, yesterday we talked about Theresa May's conference speech. We talked about the fact that somebody came out of the crowd and approached her with security failing totally. We talked about the fact that the signage on the wall started to fall off and the whole thing was a shambles. But today we talk a little bit about some of the substance of the speech. Now, bear in mind that this is the leader of the Conservative Party. They're supposed to believe in the individual. They're supposed to believe in the small state, in contrast to the socialists. But much of what we saw yesterday from Theresa May was about the big state getting just a little bit bigger. And I'm not even going to talk today about price caps or economics. I'm not even going to talk about Brexit. Hooray! I hear some of you saying in your cars. I'm going to talk about a moral issue. It's an issue that is about the relationship of the individual with the state. What Theresa May said in her conference speech yesterday was that from now on, rather than us having to opt in, if, say, we're killed in a car crash or anything awful happens to us, to our organs being taken and used for the benefit of others, we will now, under what is called presumed consent, the state will believe that our dead body is owned by them. Not by us, not by our families, but owned by them. And that if we don't want this to happen, and we don't want our bodies to be taken apart for, I emphasise, the benefit of others, we will actually have to opt out. And there are two things I want to say about this. The first is to look at the Tory manifesto, because remember, the election was on June the 8th. So what does she have to say about this in her manifesto? Only this. She said, we will launch a national campaign to increase the number of black, Asian and ethnic minority organ donors to cut the long waiting times for patients from these groups. Full stop. Nothing in the manifesto about changing the whole premise of consent. So number one, isn't it funny that all the things that were in her manifesto, like Brexit means Brexit, have been kicked out of the window, and a whole raft of new things have been brought in? And secondly, whilst I do understand that organ donation, everything from corneas to livers to whatever it may be, can be of massive benefit. And I also, and let's be clear, there are about 500 people a year who are dying because of a lack of organ donation, all right? So that's the argument for. I don't want the state to own me, whether I'm living or I'm dead. I don't believe this is right. I think if you want to increase organ donation, you do it through education. You do it every time someone visits the GP. You do it by getting people to opt in. And I find it almost extraordinary that a woman who masquerades as a Conservative, although probably for not much longer, but we'll discuss that later on in the show, actually wants the state to take this amount of power. So I'm asking you, should the state have presumed consent over your body? And if you think the answer is yes, it'll lead to great medical benefits for hundreds of people, then of course you can call me on 0345 6060 973, or perhaps like me you think the state doesn't own our body, we should opt into this, not be forced to opt out of it. Text at 84850. Either way, you can of course on Twitter using the hashtag Farage and LBC, tweet at LBC, and watch me live on Facebook from here in London, where you can also comment. And Yazza from Roehampton, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. You've never called the show before. This must be an issue that you feel very strongly about.
Actually, I have called the show before, but we haven't spoken, Nigel.
Oh, right.
I do feel very strongly about this.
Okay, well, we've not spoken before, and welcome.
You ask a very important sort of... it's a technical question. Should the state own my body? And I'm happy to have the conversation because it brings it out into the open, and it means we can actually debate this. And from my own point, I make myself very plain, and I'm very clear about it, and I blog about it, and I talk about it to people who ask me. I would rather people make a positive affirmation that, do you know what, I want to give my organs. I want to be a blood donor. I want to be a bone marrow donor or a potential bone marrow donor. But the fact is they don't. And education, I agree with you. We're launching an education program aimed at primary school-age children. The 30th of October, you're very welcome to come at City Hall. We're talking about education as well, but the education isn't happening fast enough. And in the stem cell and bone marrow and in the blood and platelets and in the organ fields, the biggest issue, and this is actually an ethnic issue more than anything else, the biggest issue is we can't get enough people on the registers, and we can't get enough black, Asian, mixed race like me, and minority ethnic people onto the register.
And just explain to me medically why this is a bigger issue for the ethnic communities.
That's a very, if I knew the answer to that, we'd fix it.
But you're the expert. I'm asking you, but I don't know.
I'm no expert. There are lots of reasons. There are religious reasons. There are cultural reasons. There are people put forward.
So hang on a second. So maybe you've
put your... There are socioeconomic reasons. Let's face it. Look, if you're looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and you're struggling to feed your family, being an organ donor is probably one of the last things on your list.
You just mentioned something. You just mentioned something in passing that I find very interesting. You said there are religious reasons. Is it likely, again, you know far more about this than I do, is it likely that if Mrs. May's speech of yesterday, although she'll be gone, obviously, but if Mrs. May's speech of yesterday actually leads to legislation that changes the law on presumed consent, and we're all opted in to giving our organs, and we have to opt out for it not to happen, is this going to cause problems with some of the religions amongst our ethnic minorities?
If it does, then those very same people can exercise their right to opt out.
Okay. Is there a specific religion that you know of that has a problem with this?
I know that most of the religions, if not all of the religions that I'm aware of, there are people who are scholars in these various religions who, none of whom, all the religions, let me put it this way, all the religions appear to have a positive, proactive agreement that you can donate organs. But then there are other people who say, scholars as well, who say, actually, that isn't the case, and here is the reason why.
Okay.
So
all right.
I think you can get really deep into that.
No, fine. Well, yeah, so picking up from your point, I would appeal to people out there who are ministers in any religion. If they have a problem with this, please call this show. So, yeah, so what you're really saying is that education's not working, yeah?
Education will work ultimately, and I have this idealistic belief that ultimately, eventually, people will actually find their way towards becoming donors, but in their own time and in their own way. And it's an intensely personal thing. My wife discussed this with me before our daughter died 3 years ago. She was 3 years old, and she needed a bone marrow transplant. We didn't quite get a good enough match, but Vicky said, "Have you thought about?" And just hear me out. Have you thought about donating Margot's organs? So this was landed right at my doorstep.
Wow, that's a very tough choice.
It was very well, and she'd been through a lot. But nevertheless, given a bit of time, a few days later, I came back round to the answer that absolutely this is the right thing to do, because there are other families with similar age children who are suffering, and they're on the waiting list, and their children will die if they don't get an organ. So,
so that also raises, and I'm very sorry to hear the horrific situation that you've been through with this, but I also question, with what Mrs. May has said about mandatory organ donations, does that apply to children too? Is that what she's proposing? Or should parents... should parents have a right to have a say over this?
Look, if Margot's brothers had presented as being matches, tissue-type matches for her, we would have had them donate. Now, they were 6 and 5 at the time. We would have explained to them what was going on, but if that was the difference between living and dying, then one way or the other, we would have discussed that with them, and we would have made a choice as their parents. These are very hard. These are not straightforward issues. It's very complex, particularly when you lob in the cultural, the socioeconomic, the religious issues. It's very complex, but we believe that ultimately people will come round to becoming donors.
Well, I think you may well be right, and I'd be happy, so for that to be the case. I'm just very concerned about the state presuming it has the power to make those decisions for us. I mean, for example, when you go into a GP surgery, do they encourage you to sign up to be an organ donor?
There's so many different touch points.
Not once, in my experience.
You get
not once.
No, you don't. You get a form when you fill in your driving license to become an organ donor. Right now there is an urgent, desperate need for blood donors from the black communities primarily who carry an RO-type blood, or they're more likely to carry an RO-type blood, because sickle cell patients out there, they urgently need blood from this particular type of blood to stay clinically well and to survive. But nobody talks about this. So I'm very happy that this is now on the agenda, although I would have wished it to be another way. My wife thinks, well, do you know what, change the system, it's not working. But so this is on the agenda, and we need more black, Asian, mixed-race people like me and minority ethnic people to join.
So is this not a problem for the white community at all, then?
No, there is always a problem. I'm most well versed in stem cell donation and bone marrow donation, and what you have there is the chances of a white Northern European person who has roughly a 69% chance of finding what they call their perfect match, a 10 out of 10 antigen match. Yeah. By stark comparison, if you're black, if you're Asian or minority ethnic, your chances fall to 21%. Okay. And if you're mixed race, they're worse still. They're worse good still. So yes, there is a clear disadvantage to being from one of those communities.
Okay, yes, listen, I thank you very much for your call, your insight, and sharing your very, very difficult personal experience. I thank you very much indeed. My body does not belong to the state, it is mine, says Claire. For the benefit of others, in inverted commas, means for research, not necessarily to save individual lives, says Jane. Very interesting point. Nigel, the government's decision to requisition our body should be discussed through our respective religions. It's a matter for the church, not for government, says David. Well, actually, David, she's decided it's a matter for government, and she's done it following on from the Welsh Assembly, who made that decision, and the Labour Party, who announced they would support it at their conference the week before. And it's worth saying that lots of other countries, particularly European ones, have gone down this road already. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively at LBC. It's 7:15. I'm looking for someone to have a private lunch with me. It's going to be at Franco's Italian restaurant here in the heart of central London. The plan is to do it on a Friday when I'm not broadcasting in the evening, and the food will be good, and if you like it, we may even have the odd glass of wine or two. And we're doing it not just to have fun, we're doing it for Global Radio's Make Some Noise charity. And, the idea is to help people, to help the young, to help the sick, to help others. And for example, Lauren got involved with the charity after the death of her son.
I was 18 years old and I had a gorgeous son, Archie. And when he was 7 weeks, so nearly 2 months old, he passed away to sudden infant death syndrome.
So to help charities such as the Lullaby Trust, go to lbc.co.uk and bid for my lunch. This auction prize closes at 7:45 tonight. Bids are roaring up. At the moment, it's £11,100. So you've got 25 minutes to beat that and help Global Radio's Make Some Noise charity. And you must, of course, go to lbc.co.uk to do that. And there, not only can you bid, but see the all-important terms and conditions.
Global's Make Some Noise, for those who don't get heard, on LBC.
So we're examining the absolute substance of Theresa May's speech yesterday and a really big potential change to the law in this country where you will have to opt out if you do not want your organs of your body, once you die, to be used for a whole variety of means. I have to say that much of what is done in the name of organ donation is absolutely fantastic, giving people a chance to live, to see, and many, many other things. But I don't want the state to control my body, whether I'm alive or dead. I think we need better education, and we can do it through GP surgeries and elsewhere to get people to opt in. And take my case, for example. I was told 30 years ago that I was barred from being an organ donor. Because of a particular illness that I'd had, I must not become an organ donor. Under this system, if May gets her way, I will automatically be an organ donor unless I go to the trouble to opt out. I think this is all fraught with difficulties. It gives the state, in my view, way too much power. Kev says to me on Facebook, you can opt out if you wish, Nigel. Well, Kev, I will, because apparently my organs wouldn't be much use to anybody else. I wonder what Abim, who's calling from Canada Water, makes of this. Abim, good evening.
Hi, good evening. First time caller, so I feel a little bit nervous.
Well, I tell you what, don't be nervous, Abim, because you've called for a reason, because you care about this subject. You're on LBC. I won't interrupt you. You say what you think.
I actually find that I agree with you, Nigel. I myself have been told that I can't give blood.
Right.
After me giving blood about 3 or 4 times, funnily enough. I started giving blood because I knew that there was a shortage. I'm from the BAME community myself. I'm of African descent. And I know that there's a shortage.
Abim, just 1 second. Having said I won't interrupt you, can you just try and speak a little bit closer to the mouthpiece? It's a little bit fuzzy.
Hello?
That's better. Go on.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's perfect.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was saying that I'm from the black and minority ethnic community myself. I am of African descent. I was told the first time I gave blood, I don't know why I wasn't told this before, but the first time I gave blood, I was told I had the sickle cell trait. But I was told to continue giving, because I have a very rare blood type and they need it specifically for people of African descent blood group. After 3 tries, I was then told that actually they can't use my blood samples. And I should no longer give blood anymore because they can't use those samples. In addition to that, the other thing which I found very interesting, which was actually prompted by the caller that you had on before, was that there is a very, very high or low shortage, should I say, of BAME donations, particularly of bone marrow. And I mean, I've been at lots of events where they're trying to continuously promote for black and minority ethnic groups to donate bone marrow. But I find it very interesting that I've signed up to that register and I haven't heard anything since. And I was told that there was a backlog of about 6 months. This has been about 2 years ago. So I find it very, this whole discussion around organ donation and the fact that people should donate their organs and that it's going to be, you have to opt out. I think personally you should be allowed to opt in.
Yes.
I think there should be a decision left to the individual. I don't think it should be something that comes from government. But I do think that, like you, there needs to be an awareness and an increase in education, particularly amongst black and minority ethnic groups. Yeah,
that's where that's where Abim Yazza, who called earlier, was saying that's where there's particularly a problem, and he was suggesting that could be for religious reasons. Do you have any experience of that?
I haven't had any experience of that myself personally. I'm a Christian, I'm a practicing Christian, but I don't think specifically, as far as my biblical knowledge there is, in terms of my knowledge of the Bible, there is anything that comes against donating in terms of donating blood, donating organs. I think it is an individual choice. I think it's more, for me, as somebody that is from that particular community, I find that it's more of a cultural thing, it's not necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a religious thing.
Okay.
I think it is a cultural thing. I think it's more, that's not what we've been brought up to do. That's not what we've ever done, and it's kind of like a passed down from generation to generation.
Abim, I thank you very much for your call. You take the same view that I take, that actually we should be educated, we should have the opportunity to opt in, but the state shouldn't take that much power. David, another new caller from Ipswich. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I'm well. Tell me about your experience of this, David.
I have actually benefited from the opt-in system. I've had a stem cell transplant 3.5 years ago.
Yeah.
I was given 18 months to live, and I needed a stem cell transplant, which is, some people call it bone marrow transplant. It's very similar.
Yep. So where was this conducted, David?
At King's Hospital in London.
Right. So how did you benefit from an opt-in then?
Because my donor was a German donor, and they have the system in Germany of opting out rather than opting in. Sorry, I'm quite nervous. It's the first time
listen, what you're saying here is a very, very important part of this debate, David, so there's no rush. Let's get this absolutely right. So you're in King's Hospital in London.
No, I was actually in Ipswich. I live in Ipswich. I went to my local Ipswich hospital. I had a very rare blood cancer, which only could be cured by a bone marrow transplant. The Anthony Nolan Trust that runs the bone marrow register in this country was contacted by the NHS or King's Hospital to find me a donor. They found me 2 perfect 10 donors, which happened to both be German.
Yeah.
They couldn't find one in this country because people don't donate, or opt to donate. So they went to Germany. What happens is I have to go in hospital. This is cutting a very long story short. Have intensive chemotherapy 10 days beforehand.
Yeah.
Anthony Nolan sends over a courier from this country.
Wow.
Goes to Germany, picks up the stem cells that have just been taken from the donor, the German donor. He then goes to the airport. They have special security passes. That is flown straight into London. Then he jumps in a taxi, comes to King's Hospital, and it was donated to me.
That is an amazing story. So you feel, Dave, that's an incredible story. So you feel
can I just say one
that you
thing?
benefited from the opt-in, yeah?
Totally. I mean, because at the end of the day, I'm a benefit. I benefited from it. It was 3.5 years ago. I was given 18 months to live.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be sitting here today if we still had the opt-in system.
Well, David, it is possible that there could have been a willing donor in Germany that had given this.
Well, possibly. Mm-hmm. Yes, you're right. That is possible. Mm-hmm. I can't argue that point. But there's possibly I wouldn't be here. And majority of stem cell transplants donors are from abroad rather than this country.
And is that because, David, of a reluctance of British people to sign up to this?
Yeah, totally. I'm one of them. I kept saying, "Oh, well, am I donating?" Yeah. People say, "Would you donate?" Yeah. Or, did I ever opt in? I never ever opted in, which makes me feel incredibly guilty these days.
But I mean, David, apart from, we've had the argument that when you renew your driving licence, amidst these myriad of forms we have to fill in, there is an option there. But I mean, have you ever, David, at your GP or anywhere else, been told just sign this box and you can simply opt in?
I'm sure I have. Did I? I never did. Did any of my family? No, they didn't. Have they all now opted to donate? Yes, they have. Do you know Wales have actually got this opt-out system now?
Yes, they have. Wales have. Scotland have got a halfway house, but the Welsh Assembly has got, I mentioned this earlier, it has gone for this system, as have many other countries in Europe too. So, David, you've got no qualms. I mean, you're a beneficiary, and how's your health now?
Yeah, really good. Really, really good.
Well,
I'm in hospital, but can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
What is your biggest issue with having to opt out?
I believe in the liberty of the individual, whether we're alive or dead. I don't like the state to take excessive power in any direction. And I genuinely, David, believe that the education in this country on being able to opt in as a donor, as an organ donor, is pitiful. Pitiful. That's what I think. Great story from David, and I understand what he's saying. But I don't want the state to have that much power. I don't trust the state that much. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:30. In the aftermath of Theresa May's speech yesterday, Britain Elects has published a poll conducted by YouGov. It's out today. When asked the question, did Theresa May's conference speech go well yesterday? 15% said well, 49% said badly, 17% neither. So, overwhelmingly, people who are polled think she did badly yesterday. I think it was a disaster. There are various commentators on Sky, through Daily Telegraph websites and whatever, saying they think it's kind of 50-50 whether she'll still be the leader at the weekend. I don't know whether those reports are right or not in terms of timeline. All I will say is she's a goner. And it's a good thing too, because if she stays, and I'm saying this particularly to those of you out there who are conservatively minded, because if she stays, Corbyn will win the next election and we won't get a proper Brexit. So we'll watch that over the course of the next few days. And very dramatically, and I am going to return to Catalonia, which I have focused a lot of my political week on. So, the situation is, the Catalan leader has indicated that the region will formally declare independence on Monday. And his plan was to do it at the next special session of the Catalonian Parliament. Spain's Constitutional Court has ordered a halt, a stoppage, to that Parliament meeting on Monday. Bear in mind, as I said last night, there are now 16,000 Spanish soldiers in 3 cruisers moored off Barcelona. I'm told the plan is that if the Catalans announce independence, that the Spanish army and police will come in, they will take over the radio stations, the television stations, government offices, and take control of Catalonia. It would be the nearest thing, I think, to the Prague Spring we've seen in Europe, which happened way back in 1968. I think the Spanish government have handled this week absolutely appallingly, and the European Union haven't just refused to criticise the violence, they're now actually justifying it. I sense Catalan's independence is now far closer than it was this time last week, but I worry that something really very unpleasant and nasty could happen in Barcelona and elsewhere next week. And you've got 15 minutes more, in fact less than that, you've got less than 10 minutes to bid to have lunch with me for Global Radio's Make Some Noise charity. We talked about it earlier. Bids close at 7:45. The last top bid in was £11,100. You will have lunch with me and be able to give money to that charity. You've got to be 18 to go to lbc.co.uk to bid, and there you'll see the full terms and conditions. Back to this whole question of organ donations and whether we should opt in to give our organs after we die, or whether the state should assume that it's got the right to use them. And Gary is calling from Manchester. Gary, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I'm very well, Gary. My position on this is I just don't want the state to own me alive or dead. And I'd rather there was a much better education campaign encouraging us all to opt in. That's where I come from on this. How do you feel?
Well, I kind of agree with you, and it's more the case of this is a typical politician, please excuse, a typical politician coming up with a great idea, but not thinking it through. And it was only when you sort of announced the subject this evening, I opened my wallet up. I've carried around a donor card, and it's not a plastic one, it's a paper one. It's a very old, tatty paper one.
Yep.
And on the card, it's a paper one, it says, donor card, I would like to help somebody to live after my death. Let your relatives know your wishes and keep this card with you at all times. I've signed it. I've kept that card with me since the 21st of May, 1993.
Okay.
On there, it says, I request after my death, A, series of asterisks, my kidneys, corneas, heart, lungs, liver, pancreas be used for transplantation, or B, any part of my body to be used for the treatment of others. Now, when I signed the card, and I've actually scored through B, because when I signed the card, I asked the question of my GP, and at the time, my GP said, well, that can be that they can take your body and they can use it for medical research.
Yes, that's right.
And I had some friends that worked at a hospital, so therefore, asking the gory questions in the pub, they said, well, yeah, we'll dissect your heart, we'll dissect your lungs, we'll take this, we'll do this, we'll do such and such. And I get that. It needs to be done. But I am a person that has emotions and feelings, and there's certain things that I'm happy to donate my body for. And, science and medicines have moved on since in the last 24 years since I signed this card. Now, I don't want to donate my body to be sliced and diced. If I'm going to donate my body, any of those, kidneys, corneas, heart, lungs, liver, pancreas, if any of those, I want them to go inside somebody and to help improve their life.
And isn't that the problem, Gary? Isn't that the problem with the state assuming it can do as it wishes with our dead body? It can do pretty much whatever it wants to, can't it?
Exactly. And so therefore, where's that caveat now that I've deleted line B? Are they just going to ride rush on? They've not thought about it, Nigel. It's
no.
Typical,
well, I tell you what, Gary.
Also,
Gary, if it's that greater idea, why wasn't it in her manifesto on June the 8th?
Well, maybe she's just scrambling around for some good ideas, but that's another.
Well, I think that's almost certainly true.
She must just be, but on that side, there is a way I did actually feel very sorry for her. but it was like watching a car crash.
Oh, God, absolutely. Anyway, so Gary, you have carried your card. You have carried your card with you for nearly a quarter of a century. You will go on carrying your card, but your card is specific about what you wish your organs to be used for if the very worst happens.
Well, the very worst is going to happen one day to all of us. And I just think there should be a public education. These public information films, they don't, we can remember them from days gone by. Charlie said, etc., etc. There's no public education any longer. It should be opt in, and just gently persuade people.
Yep. I don't disagree, Gary. I don't disagree with you one little bit. I thank you for your call. I'm going next to Oren, who's calling from Bromley, who is, I'm told, very deeply engaged with this issue. Oren, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
Good. So,
yes, I am very much engaged with this, and I'll give my credentials as to why.
Yeah.
I believe in the opt-out system. I carry 3 cards.
Mm-hmm.
An organ donor card, a blood card, and a stem cell card. Tomorrow I give blood for the 38th time.
Okay.
And I agree what Yasser and others are intimating in terms of there is an urgency of trying to save lives in terms of this opt-out system. It doesn't matter what people think about what happened with the car crash sort of situation with Theresa May yesterday in terms of how people perceive her. What did come out positively was this decision to say, you know what, we need to save more lives.
So Oren, if it's that good a decision, why did it not happen before? Why was it not in the manifesto? Why is it not something that people have talked about, debated and voted on?
That's a good question. It seems like, as a perception, that the Daily Mirror campaign, which has been running for 2 years, which Vince Cable endorsed a few weeks ago, which Jeremy Corbyn then said last week.
He did.
I think it forced a situation with the Prime Minister to say, you know what, we need something good to come out of our situation. That came out very positively yesterday, and immediately in the last 24 hours, the debate has come to the national level of we need to save more lives. And I'm from the black community, and this subject matter is so important to everyone. But because race is such a major factor on matching, finding donors, organ donors, stem cell donors, blood donors, especially organ donors, is very difficult for the black and Asian and minority communities, the mixed race communities. Because you need.
I've asked this already. This already. Why is it a particular problem in that community? Why are there fewer people in that community pro rata acting as donors? Because that's what it sounds like.
It's a combination of things. I'm the head of the ACLT, which is the African Caribbean Leukemia Trust, and co-chair of the National Black Asian Minority Ethnic Transplant Alliance.
Okay.
And we realized, and we're working with the Department of Health, the government, NHS Blood and Transplant, to target the communities to be more proactive on this. There's a lot of myths and fears and taboos, lots of mistrust of the system, and lots of negative things that come to people's minds. But you've got to put a fork in the ground, a stake in the ground, as of yesterday, and say, you know what? What's gone on in the past? The mistrust has to stop because lives matter.
So Oren, you
have to step forward.
You see May's announcement as being a big step forward, yeah?
I see it as a big step forward in terms of creating the debate at the top table to say whether we be black, white, Asian, Oriental, whatever, we need to save more lives because hundreds of people are dying.
And Oren, no, I get the passion of what you've said, and I admire you for the work that you do on this. I really genuinely do. Just quickly, is it acceptable if Mrs. May has her way and the state has the right to use our bodies when we're dead as they see fit? Is it equally acceptable for the state then to use our bodies for medical science and research?
With your permission, yes, you need permission.
But she's not asking for permission. She's asking for the state to have the ability, unless we go to the trouble of opting out. Surely that's taking this too far, isn't it? It's not exactly that, Nigel. What she's saying is we are providing the populace with an option to say, you know what, deemed in, you've got to actually opt out, so we can actually get many more people to have. Well,
this
I've no doubt you will. But I would love for the state not to do it and for education to work. Oren, I thank you very much for your call. The online auction is now closed. I will reveal the final tally after the break, plus give you another way to get involved in some way with Global Radio's Make Some Noise charity. But for now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It is 7:46. So the online auction has now closed for somebody to come and have lunch with me to support Global's Make Some Noise charity. And the final tally, the highest bid was an amazing £13,800. I don't know who you are, but I want to say thank you very much, that incredible amount of money, towards Global Radio's Make Some Noise charity. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the lunch. I hope we're going to have some serious fun too. And for those who feel left out by all of that, I will be doing a stage performance at the Hippodrome Casino in London. I'll be doing it on Wednesday, the 10th of January. Again, it's the same charity, and we've heard earlier from the Lullaby Trust, and we've heard earlier in the week from Nick about, funnily enough, about liver transplants, the very subject we're debating this evening. You can come along if you want to see me at the Hippodrome Casino on the 10th of January. Tickets are available just by going to lbc.co.uk. You've got to be 18, but you can go there, you can get the terms and conditions, and the starter for that is £85 per ticket. Big thank you to whoever paid £13,800 to have lunch with me. Crikey, should do this more often, really. Simple solution, Nigel. Have an organ donor recipient system. If you don't donate, you can't receive. Result, 99% take-up, says John in Muswell Hill. I think doctors might have a problem with that, with the Hippocratic Oath. I don't know. If you're a doctor, please ring up, tell me I am wrong. Patricia says, why don't they make the offer when you register for your national insurance number? At least there's a chance that you'll understand, and you would then have a choice. And I am for having a choice and for better education. And I wonder what Janice, who's calling from Leeds, makes of that.
Hello, Nigel.
Good evening.
I just want to say at the beginning, in case I forget at the end, have a lovely lunch. I hope it works.
Well, I'm very pleased to do it. And as I say, Janice, interestingly, part of what Global Radio's Make Some Noise charity does is to help sponsor and help people with organ donations. So there's nothing in my attitude to this that is anti. I'm just worried about the state, Janice, having this power.
Yes.
And I also, Janice, can I just say one more thing? I also think that the education and the inducements to sign up on this are pretty poor. What do you think?
Yeah, I think my following of politics is basically listening to LBC. I'm one of those naughty people. It doesn't kind of like, I'm not glued to Theresa May's speech or anything.
I tell you what, Janice, you didn't miss much.
I know. I've heard you. I do want to make the point, Nigel. I disagree with you, I'm afraid. And I feel that opting in isn't working because people don't want to think about anybody dying close to them, and they just don't get around to it. But opting out, if people feel that passionately about it, they will opt out for religious reasons or whatever. They will opt out quite. So I feel that there should be a change of rules, that we should be opting out instead. And
are you comfortable with the state having that much power over us?
Personally, yeah, because I think very simply, Nigel, I know that this is in the minority, probably. When you're dead, you're dead. I really feel that.
Some people feel that. There's an awful lot of people of a variety of religious faiths who would perhaps, I think, take a very different view on this. And I think the government may be surprised, Mrs May may be surprised just how much upset this presumption, and it is, presumed consent's the word, will cause in those communities. Janice very clearly has that view. She thinks it's a good thing because there'll be more organs available. Let's go to Germany. Jeff, a new caller from Ramstein in Germany. Jeff, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Nice to speak to you, and thank you for taking my call.
Good. Now, I understand that you've been a recipient of an organ
I have.
Donation.
2 years ago, I received a new lung.
Wow.
From a German family.
Yep.
And I'm a big fan of yours, but I want to take issue with your stance on this, because I think it's very easy for people that have not been on the transplant list or had someone on the transplant list and die to say, I disagree with it. and you state that you're against the government having the power, but they don't have the power because anyone that doesn't want to do that can opt out.
Yes, they can, but they have to go to the trouble to opt out, unless it's...
Nigel, I want to take issue when you say you have to take trouble. How much trouble is it to send an email or say yes or no when someone asks you? I wouldn't say that is troublesome.
Jeff, once government take power over an issue, they're unlikely to advertise very hard for people to opt out. And by the way, I'm not taking a huge issue over this. I want to hear more about your story too. I'm not taking a huge stand on this. I just feel, Jeff, that the levels of education and encouragement to sign up are pretty poor. That's all.
Well, if you want the people to be more educated on it, Nigel, why don't you help the government pay for it? Because it costs a lot of money to educate on a massive scale. And the government only has limited funds.
Well, we've had suggestions tonight, Jeff.
If you want...
We've had suggestions tonight that when you sign up for your national insurance number, you could be encouraged to do it. Maybe GPs could do a bit more than just leave a few leaflets around. But tell me about your case, though. So how long were you on the list for? Waiting.
January 2015, with a lung disease, which was gradually deteriorating week by week, and by the time it got to, I was sort of getting up towards the top of the list.
Yeah.
And it's not like a list in a numerical order. What happens is there's less organs than there are patients requiring them. So what happens when an organ becomes available, the person just about to die gets that organ, and that is what happened to me. I was come to the end of October, early November in 2015.
Yeah.
I was almost dead. I was connected to a blood oxygenating machine. I had a couple of weeks to live, and I got a new right lung from a German guy.
Amazing. And Jeff, tell me, was it 3 years on, do you say? I mean, how is life now?
2 years.
How is life now?
Yeah, pretty good. It's a very weird feeling. I used to be 100% Englishman, and now I'm only 90%.
Well, it sounds like you're alive and kicking, and your sense of humour hasn't disappeared. And, as many would say, perhaps German engineering in some ways is superior, often, to British engineering. Jeff, great call. Almost enough to make me change my mind. That was such a very powerful call. My last caller, haven't got long, sorry. Robert from Kings Langley, you've got 30 to 40 seconds to make your case. Good evening.
Hiya, Nigel. You're wrong in a nutshell, I'm
okay,
afraid.
Fine.
And it's very simple. I think it's one of the most progressive actions that the government can take, and it's exceptional. I think it's on par with a smoking ban, in fact.
Oh, gosh.
I just want you to imagine that your kid is sick and you're in hospital.
Yep.
And your child needs an organ.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been in that situation. I obviously never hope I am. But that's why it needs to be done. And it's not because people aren't educated, it's just because they don't opt in. They just don't get round to it. They don't have the time. They forget.
Robert, that may well be right, which is why I've argued over the course of this hour that it should be much easier for people to opt in by it being encouraged a lot more. And, you can argue it's a good thing like the smoking ban. I hate the smoking ban. I hate big government. I hate government telling me what's good for me. Robert, I take your point. I understand everybody who's disagreed with me tonight disagrees because they think too few people opt in, and this is the only way effectively to make sure there are sufficient numbers of organs available. Although, as our caller Jeff from Germany said, even with a compulsory system, there's still are never going to be quite enough organs available for everybody. It's been a good debate. I don't feel hugely strongly on the issue. I just don't like and trust government particularly.